Since the first television began to illuminate our homes with dancing colors and flickering lights, we have watched, absorbing, studying, imitating. We are the Channel Changelings, and we are here.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Channel Changelings. I'm Greg of FanZcene, and with me today is Adam Green. Greetings, Adam. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good, doing good. Little internet troubles here and there, but I'm doing good. But I'm glad to have you here with me today because I've been a huge fan, and I know you've told this story multiple times, and but the story of how Hatchet came to be is an incredible story, and I absolutely love it. So if you don't mind, I would love to hear it again.
Sure. When I was 8 years old, my parents sent me to summer camp. It was the only year that I ever went to summer camp. It was like sleepaway camp for 2 months. And I don't know what my expectations were for sleepaway camp, but it was probably from what I saw in movies. And I just thought it was going to be really fun. I thought I was going to be hanging out with girls and getting up to no good. And then it just sucked. Like, they had us scrubbing floors and cleaning toilets. And I hated it. To sort of jump ahead in this story, when Hatchet was doing festivals and people would ask where the idea came from, and I would tell this story, I would mention the name of the camp when I was telling the story, which was Camp Avoda. And at one of the screenings, there was somebody in the audience who during the Q&A said, "Do you speak Hebrew?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Avoda means work in Hebrew. So your parents literally sent you to camp work." So I've never quite forgiven my parents for that. But on the very first night, the counselors told us, "Stay away from this one cabin. You can go wherever you want, but don't go near here or else Hatchet Face will get you." And even though I was only 8, my parents let me watch horror movies. So I was all about it. And I loved Michael Myers. I loved Jason. And like, I just was so excited. I'm like, who's Hatchet Face and how's he going to get me? And they had nothing else for their story. They just had the name Hatchet Face, which especially back in the 80s was like a term people threw around if like, oh, that person's ugly, they're a hatchet face, whatever, I guess. And so I was really bummed out that Hatchet Face wasn't really going to kill me. And so that night when we were going to sleep, the other kids in my cabin, who I think were also ages like 8 to 10 probably, they were like, "Do you think Hatchet Face is going to get us?" And I don't even know how I came up with it, but I was just like, you know why they call him Hatchet Face? He was this deformed kid and his dad was trying to save him and chopped through the door with a hatchet and got him in the face, and now he's a ghost, and if you go near there he'll kill you. And it wasn't even really a good story, but the other kids were so freaked out by it. And so the counselors ended up calling my parents, and there was like a moment there where they were going to send me home from camp because now I was the weird kid. And these days I think you end up on some sort of list if you freak out other kids that bad. But the story always stuck with me, not even because of the Hatchet Face thing, but because of almost getting sent home from camp for being into horror movies. And now, you go to conventions and you're around thousands of people that all love the same stuff. And they're the most normal, well-adjusted, kind, generous. Like, it's just crazy how times have changed. But back then you were definitely weird if you were into this stuff, especially when you were 8. But that was really how it all started. When I first came to LA, all I wanted to do was make a sitcom, which I ended up doing years later called Holliston. But I was mainly just doing comedy. I always loved horror. That was like my passion. But I was pursuing comedy mainly because that was something you could do with no budget. But I started doing stand-up, and I never wanted to be a professional stand-up. I never I don't think I could have been. The hardest thing about stand-up is you have to do the same material, like the same 10 minutes 100 times before you actually nail it. And as soon as I would see someone in the audience that I knew had seen me before, I would do all new material because I'm like, well, they already heard that joke. That's not how you do it. So some nights I would do okay, but other nights I was adequate at best. But it was while I was doing stand-up that I wrote Hatchet. And when the script first went around, I had an agent at that point off of my comedy writing, and everybody in town passed on it. They all said slashers are dead, because this was like 2003, 2004 when that script went around. And at the time, horror movies were all torture porn remakes. It just wasn't the genre I grew up in loving. So all I was trying to do was make the type of movie I wanted to see again. It wasn't reinventing the wheel, but I try to tell this to other writers all the time when people are like, oh, I was writing a werewolf movie, but now there's a werewolf movie coming out. I don't give a fuck. What's your werewolf movie? What's your voice? What's your take on this? That's how many zombie movies have there been made? How many slasher movies? How many ghost stories? If it's good, it's good. And so my thing was, I always found the 80s movies, the 80s slasher movies, I loved the villain and I loved the kills, but I could do without the rest of it because it was just boring. Just kill these fucking people already. I don't care. And so what I tried to do was do like kind of like what Landis did with American Werewolf or Tom Holland with Fright Night, but just make it as entertaining and fun as possible, but still go over the top with how violent and gruesome it was. And so executives did not understand that one bit. There were lots of meetings I got off of the script for Hatchet, which I believe the first time it went around, it was called Victor Crowley, but I'd have to check on that. I know it was called Victor Crowley when I first wrote it. I'm just not sure that was the title on the draft. Anyway, I just, it was really disheartening. And they're just like, slashers are dead. You either need to take the comedy out or make it way less violent. And so we ended up making it independently, which is, I mean, that's like a 4-hour story right there. But anyone who owns the Blu-rays, especially the new Steelbook set, all of that stuff is on there, how we put it together, how we got it made. And then even then, once it was done, I showed it to the agency that rep me at the time, which I don't like to throw them under the bus, so I never say it was United Talent Agency. But they passed on representing it. They were like, we represent, I don't remember the guy's name, but he was their like indie guy. And he's like, we represent film festival movies. And I was like, all right. And then we got accepted into Tribeca to have a world premiere. And then they were like, this could be a franchise. So I left UTA and went elsewhere. And look, no one knows. You could say that about any movie. This person said it wasn't going to work, or it's nobody knows. And this definitely was a weird thing to be doing at the time we were doing it. But thankfully, 18 months of festivals, every convention that would have me, it was like campaigning almost, because you realize even once it had distribution, they're not going to spend any money on advertising it. So it's all on you. And that, I think, is one of the hardest crash courses in independent filmmaking, is you just want to make the thing. And all of us would love to just be an artist and let the work speak for itself. But then no one's going to see your movie. And so many amazing filmmakers and amazing movies that I've gotten to see at festivals, and then no one's ever heard of them. And it's because they like refuse to go promote. I didn't like doing it either. You feel like a car salesman, but how is anybody supposed to know that it exists if you don't tell them? So the conventions were huge for us. And what's been amazing though, is I've done my podcast for 11 and a half years now, every week. And constantly, Joe Lynch and I are telling people, why are you not at conventions? You got to get out there. You got to go, like, even if the convention isn't inviting you, go make up postcards for your movie. See if you can show a clip from it, a trailer, something. That's your audience. But then you saw Damien and David from the Terrifier series doing just that. Nobody saw Terrifier 1, and yet everyone knew who Art the Clown was because they did the work. And then Terrifier 2 comes out, tail end of the pandemic, theaters are just opening again, horror fans are so hungry for something. And then because theaters were so desperate, they got to play it unrated, which we had tried 12 years earlier with Hatchet 2, but we got yanked in like 24 hours of the movie coming out. All screens just pulled it. But this time it worked. And watching that movie just blow up. I was just in a Spirit Halloween store, and you walk in, animatronic Art the Clown. I mean, the third one at the time we're recording this isn't even out yet. And it's huge. And I'm so proud of them. And it's been so fun to see. And in a personal way, it feels like vindication against the MPAA because finally somebody did it. I tried, but I lost.
Hey, but at least we got like 4 Hatchet movies now, and like you said, you got it out there, you got it made. And I went to Spirit Halloween too. It's like as soon as you walk in, there's Art the Clown right there in your face, honking his horn with the animatronic there. I took a picture of it, everything. It's great. It's just, as a horror fan myself, I know I got my superhero stuff behind me, but I do have my Evil Dead thing. But as a horror fan myself, who grew up with I grew up with the Universal Monsters, the Freddy, the Jasons, all that stuff. When I saw Hatchet for the first time, I was like, this is the movie I've been missing, because it was funny. It was entertaining. It was bloody and gory. It had boobs, and it wasn't just like boobs for the sake of boobs. It was funny boobs. Like, because I like how you incorporated it. You know, it's just like, oh, I'm a teen girl and I'm taking my top off.
I was trying to make a commentary on how ridiculous that is in these movies. And I think most horror fans appreciated that. There were certainly critics that were like, and the nudity is completely gratuitous. Right. Like, that was the point. And then in the fourth one, I was like, all right, we've already pointed out the gratuitous female nudity. Maybe it's time for male nudity. And so we did it, and man, was that a thing. Like, just to show a flaccid penis on an autographing table, which we thought was hilarious. Poor Perry Shen, like everyone who meets him at conventions, there's always someone now who's got to be like, hey man, and pretend like they're going to whip it out. I don't think anyone actually has yet. But I don't know, I'm going to see him in a couple of weeks. I'll have to see what happens. But there was a whole thing with that where, and I don't blame the distributor one bit. They're just doing what they have to do. But because of the male nudity, then the movie wasn't going to be able to be listed. This is how much times have changed in the last like 5-6 years. It wasn't going to be able to be listed in new releases on a lot of on-demand and digital sites. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't understand why, but there was something about that people had a problem with. And I was like, all right, if you're going to cut that out, you have to cut the girl lifting her shirt up too, because then that's offensive, right?
Yeah.
No. That's okay. But you can't show anyway, there's dicks in movies all the time. There's dicks in TV shows and stuff now, but that became a thing. And what was heartbreaking was that fourth Hatchet, that was just made as a surprise for fans, because it was always just going to be 3 movies. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened. And it was like the 10th anniversary was coming up of the original. And it was like, what if we made it secretly and surprised everybody and then just toured with it, which was a huge success and one of the best times ever. But I would get comments from female fans being like, thank you for doing that. Like, it's about time. And it's not like I'm the first person to put a dick in a movie, but the context of it. And then when the movie came out, you know, physical media is kind of a dying thing. Most people streamed it, which, by the way, if you're streaming the Hatchet movies, make sure it says unrated, because if it doesn't, you're seeing the MPAA versions and they don't tell you that. I think
that's why I like physical media, though.
Physical media much better, but most people, they don't even own something that'll play a Blu-ray anymore, which is so sad. The special features, the commentaries. But what are you going to do? But I would meet people at conventions being like, yeah, I just watched them. They weren't as gory as I remembered. And it's like, what? Well, where did you watch it? Amazon Prime or here or there. And I'm like, because that's not the fucking movie, dude. So I made enough of a stink that now at least
Yeah.
I think on some of them, Amazon will say R-rated version, but the average person is going to think, oh, good, that must be the full movie. It's not. So it's insane how hard the ratings board was on these 4 films so far. It makes no sense to me. They're so harmless. Yes, they're really violent, but there's nothing realistic about it. Like, I love when people are like, there's no such thing as a gas-powered belt sander. This is stupid. I'm like, you know what else there isn't? There isn't an undead swamp ghost that's going to chase you through a bayou and kill it. But yeah, it's the belt sander. That's the problem. But that's also that's part of the fun in doing this. You don't take it personally. You don't get like offended or upset by it. You just have to laugh. But getting the fact that all of these films did get some sort of theatrical release, that we all who worked on them got to go see them in a theater with packed audiences cheering and laughing, and then the smiles on people's faces, like that's why you do it, because it's miserable working in this industry, as I'm sure everybody you've ever spoken to will tell you. But then that's the drug, is that moment where you're waiting for the joke to happen and it works, and most of the audience is all laughing or screaming, or when they cheer. I mean, there's nothing else like it. It's a drug.
I can't blame you there, man. I would love to. Honestly, I would love to feel that feeling. I'm sort of trying here with my little channel that I got. I want to talk to you a little bit about Holliston, because a friend of mine, his name is VHS Mikey, is what he goes by. He turned me on to Holliston years back, because I was unaware of it at first, and because I was a fan of yours. So how you said you went to Hollywood to be a stand-up comedian, and you went to Holliston. So how did you end up getting that all made?
Okay. So Holliston. So the very first thing I did when I still lived in Boston, which also that's my advice to anybody who wants to do this, try to come to LA having made stuff. Have good scripts, not just scripts that you finished, good scripts, because chances are good your first couple, they're probably not that good. So come with good scripts, short films that you can be, if they haven't already screened at some like real film festivals, that you can be submitting to film festivals. But come here with something. I didn't want to come here like other people where it's like, all right, I'm here, give me a ladder to start climbing. It doesn't work like that. And so I had made a feature when I still lived in Boston, when I was 24. And I had a job making really bad local cable commercials right when I got out of college. I got to stop saying it like that. They weren't bad. They were what they were. And it was now I can see what a great experience that was, because the way it worked, like I worked at a place called Time Warner Cable in Malden, Massachusetts. And I was so lucky to get that job. I worked with the best people, especially my boss, but I'll get to that. But we had to go meet with the client. So let's say like whatever, Joe's Furniture is gonna make a cable commercial. And usually the commercial was like included, because they spent a lot of money to have these commercials breaking on ESPN or MTV or whatever network they were going to break on. But you show up and you meet with the client, who maybe they've been making pizzas. Every business has been family owned and operated for 40 years. Well, there it was family owned and operated for 40 years. And they have a friendly and knowledgeable staff. They want their fucking kids in the commercial. At the end of the commercial, they want their storefront, which is fucking awful, in a strip mall, power lines going over the top, and everyone waving and all these graphics. But you go in there with the best intentions, being like, what are some commercials that have stood out to you? And they always name national ads. And you're like, let's make you an ad that feels like a Domino's ad. Let's make it. No, it's just, they ruin it every time. And then you have to go make it with no money, 3 lights, a beta cam, 1 assistant on set, but you're doing the sound, you're shooting it. Then you have to edit it. And then you have to get notes from the person who's been making pizzas for 40 years. And they're like, I've been making pizzas for 40 years. Let me tell you how to make a commercial. And it's exactly what the studio system is. Now, at the time, I just thought, oh man, someday I'm going to get out of here. I'm still in it. Now it's fucking Warner Brothers, Universal, whatever. Yeah. They've been in business for 40 years. They're family owned and operated. It doesn't change. And I'm so grateful for that experience, because other writers, especially, they'll be like, how do you stay so even keeled when they're giving you bad notes? People who listen to my podcast know this story, but I wrote an animated Aquaman for Warner Brothers in 2008. And unfortunately, I think Green Lantern and Wonder Woman tanked, so they never made Aquaman. But they let me write a hard R, violent as fuck Aquaman, because they're like, what character do you want to write a movie for? And I'm like, Aquaman. Now, this was long before the Jason Momoa Aquaman. Aquaman was the joke to everybody. And I'm like, he killed himself at the end of my script. Like, it was so dark. And they let me do it. And then at the last second, they call me in for notes, and they're like, no one wanted to give me the note. And I'm like, what's the note? And they're like, this is going to be one of your stories. You're going to go tell everybody. I'm like, what's the note? And they're like, they need you to take the scenes with water out.
What? How are you going to do that?
My hand to God, take the scenes with water out. And I just started laughing. And I'm like, so cool. We're just going to make man. Like, what? And they're like, okay, wait. Let us explain. He can be at the bottom of the ocean or on land, but he can't be near the surface. The whole movie, he's at the surface. So anyway, it's probably insane. A good thing it never got made. But anytime you see a movie that got finished and that's any good, it is a small miracle. And with horror, it's usually the indie stuff. There's been plenty of studio stuff that's been fantastic, but it's usually the indie stuff, because you can't try to do this with them. They don't. Every now and then you'll find an exec who really does appreciate this stuff and know what they're doing. But anyway, what was the point of this? The commercials, right? I could borrow the equipment at night, borrow in quotes. And I realized my very first day working there, they stuck me with this guy. I was his intern. And as soon as we got in the truck and I looked at the equipment, I'm like, you don't want to do this forever, do you? Like, literally, I'd been working there less than 10 minutes. And we were going to shoot Allen Mello Dodge in Nashua, New Hampshire. And I was just like, this sucks, man. I don't want to be doing this. I want to be making movies. But that was Will Barrett, who's been my DP and cinematic life partner now for 26 years. There's only one thing I've ever done that Will didn't shoot, and that was Victor Crowley, because he got an offer for some huge thing. He had to take that because there's no money in making hatchet movies. Like the budgets are small, and we try to put everything on the screen. Anyway, at some point we made a short film that was just supposed to be for a Halloween party. I used to do these big Halloween dinners, and I'm like, wouldn't it be fun to make a short to show? It was never meant for anybody else to see. It's really stupid. And it was basically, what if Jason and Michael Myers stalked the same group of people by mistake and then fell in love with each other? Like, and all the dialogue was lifted from other horror movies for the most part, which my group of friends would get that. But that was the first time we did the Sander kill. And anyway, it was called Columbus Day Weekend. And then people would ask for a copy. And back then, this is 1998, it's VHS copies. Like, so we would just start giving them to friends. And then like 2 months later, I got an email from a guy at United Talent Agency who was an assistant agent. And he's like, there's a bunch of people here laughing at your short. And we went, you might not remember me. We went to high school together. It's like, what? And thanks to him, because I don't know if I ever would have come to LA. But like now it felt like, wow, something could happen. So he's like, you should come out and meet with these people. So I did. And by the time I had no money, like everyone knows what it's like to have no money, but I mean, I had no money. And just to save up for the flight to come to LA. And I was only here for like 48 hours. But by the time I got here, nobody wanted to meet with me anymore. They were all excited about what became South Park. And when they showed me The Spirit of Christmas, that short, I was like, it's funny, but there's no show here. See, nobody knows anything.
Nobody knows. Yeah.
And he was like, well, now, you got to make a feature. And I'm like, okay, what is that? He's like, it's like what you did, but longer. This is why when I tell people, if I can do it, you can do it too. I'm a fucking idiot. Like, so if I could find my way, you definitely can, whoever's seeing this. And so I came back and I'm like, now we're going to make a feature with the beta cam and the 3 lights. And I wrote Coffee and Donuts, which was we changed it at that point from someone wanting to be a horror filmmaker to 2 radio DJs, which people who know Holliston know. Adam and Joe were then the hosts of a cable access, and that whole thing. But if people always are asking, how can I see Coffee and Donuts? You can't, because there is, I don't know, probably 300 copyright infringement instances in that movie. We didn't know what we were doing. And remember, we shot it on tape and it was edited tape to tape. So once you made a cut, you couldn't change it. How that movie's watchable, but I mean, it won a film festival, won Best Picture. It started my whole career. But I'm like literally singing an Aerosmith song at one point in it. All of our t-shirts have copywritten logos. Every poster that you like, it would be such a nightmare to try to get that put out. I have screened it publicly, but it always has to be like a surprise. So like there was a screening of Frozen at the New Beverly here in LA. I don't know, like 11, 12, something like that. And then afterwards, I surprised everyone by showing Coffee and Donuts. With the podcast, Joe and I do a thing called Yorkie-thon every year where we raise money for a dog rescue. I showed it as a surprise at like 4 a.m. during the live stream. So I am proud of it that, look, we made a movie for $400 that launched our careers, and there's something about it, but you don't need to see it. Like if you've seen Holliston, you've seen Coffee and Donuts, only better. So anyway, I came out here once that feature was done. Actually, once we won Best Picture in the, it was called the Smoky Mountain Film Festival. And we were like, holy shit. No one's ever heard of the Smoky Mountain Film Festival. Which is probably why we won. It doesn't even exist anymore. When we won the top prize, we were like, holy shit, do we get money? No, we got a Pelican camera case, which is a really nice camera case, but it fits 1 lens in it. So to this day, Will and I, like, he gets it for a few months. I get it for a few months. But we made a movie for $400 in 1999. Yeah. And so there's no excuse for anybody now not to do something. You can do it on your phone. Like, yeah. And I know people hate hearing that. I know that's not like a real movie the way you're thinking of it. But when we were starting, we needed film to make like a real movie. There was no really like cheap way to do it, but we found a way. And then I think it was the following Sundance, Mike White's movie Chuck and Buck played at Sundance, and everyone's like, the first movie ever shot on video. And we're like, fuck you, dude. Like,
we did it too.
Yes. No one cared, but
oh man,
I'm not Mike White, but still, I'm Adam Green. Still a color there, right?
Adam Green, man.
But when I got out here, Coffee and Donuts was the thing, and the agency was like, this should be a sitcom. And so I was really lucky because I thought I gave it like 5 years of when I moved here. I'm like, if I haven't made any real progress in 5 years, I got to just move back home and figure out another way or something else, because it's so expensive to live in LA. And I was starving. So I was like the DJ at the Rainbow, and I would eat the leftover food off of people's plates at the end of the night. Like, I mean, it was bad. It was really hard. And then I sold Coffee and Donuts as a sitcom to, Tom Shadyac was the producer, and we sold it to UPN. If younger people probably won't remember what UPN was.
I remember
UPN was the urban network. So it was all black shows. And then they bought the story of my life, because nothing screams urban programming like me. But I was so excited. And Disney Touchstone was the studio, UPN was the network. And right when I finished the script, there was a merger between UPN and the WB to become the CW. And so all development was scrapped, and they held the rights for 5 years. So I couldn't touch it. And fuck, was that heartbreaking. Then I ended up writing Hatchet or Victor Crowley, whatever, in the DJ booth. The whole story that I already told with that gets made, that comes out. And then it was like Spiral, Grace, Frozen. And then the rights came back to me for Coffee and Donuts. So this time, Joe and I were going to be in it, because the UPN version, I wasn't going to be in it. That was the first thing they told me, is like, you're not going to be in it. And the two people I wanted, this is 2003. I said the two main guys should be Zach Galifianakis and Kevin Hart. And they said, who are they? So again, no one knows anything. I knew who they were because they were repped at the same place as me, and I'd seen their stuff. They weren't names yet, but regardless. But it's such a long story for how Holliston happened. So then we sold it to G4, and I knew this time, don't sign the contract. Not until it's actually gonna get made, because you never know if the pilot will even be shot, let alone picked up. And right before we were going to shoot, and at this point I had Dave Brocky, I had Dee Snider, I had Corey and Laura, and then there was another merger, and G4 became the Esquire network and was no longer for like geeks. And I hadn't signed the contract, so I still had the rights. And then the producer of Frozen, Peter Block, calls me and he's like, I'm the president of FearNet. And I'm like, awesome, you're the president of a website. He's like, no, it's a network. I'm like, FearNet's a network? I don't get it. And they explained the whole plan, and Sony's behind it, and FearNet was going to be in like 68 million homes by that spring. And he's like, I need an original show, and I don't want to do what everyone expects from a horror network, which is an anthology, like a Tales from the Crypt. And I'm like, I've got just the thing. I'm like, it's a sitcom, but it's for horror fans, and it'll be tons of horror cameos. It'll be violent at times. We break the fourth wall. We're making fun of sitcoms, even though we're in one. And I'm not sure he fully understood it, but he went for it. And then there we were in 2011, finally. So that was 13 years later, making it. And it was the greatest time of my life. Those 2 seasons, I've never laughed that much. I've never been happier. That was the dream, was to do that show that way. Like, yes, it would have been greater to have more money and a bigger budget and stuff, but whatever they gave us, we made it work. And we had the same budget for season 2 as season 1. In season 2, we stretched to 10 episodes and an hour Christmas special. But then there was a thing with FearNet's carriage agreement, and they weren't in 68 million homes. I don't even know the exact number. It wasn't terrible, but it was way up the dial, and people just didn't. Everyone were like, why did you call it FearNet? That sounds like a website.
Yeah.
But
I never had it myself, so
yeah, it was and this was before watching things digitally was like the main way to watch things. So it was on iTunes, it was available in those areas, but that wasn't what people were accustomed to. And so regardless, the show was doing well, mainly because we would do the convention appearances and perform. We would do live episodes in front of people, like script readings and stuff. And I would write a different script for every convention that was full of local references or references to that convention. We would have guest stars hidden in the audience. We would bring fans up to play roles. At one convention, we even let fans choose who they wanted to audition to be in the show and who they wanted to read against. And there would be sides prepared for that. So they could audition with Corey or Laura or me or Joe or Dave. We really made an impact by doing that. And so the show was really starting to pick up. And then right when we were going to start season 3, Dave Brocky passed away. And then this, like, it was like 11 or 13 days later, something. It was like with a very short window of time, there was a merger, and Time Warner and Comcast merged. And so FearNet got dissolved. And it was just like the other times it was heartbreaking, but now we were doing it. And we had a 3rd season coming, and that 3rd season was so good. Like, that's why the 2nd season ends on such a cliffhanger, because we knew we had a 3rd season already, and it never got to happen. At least not yet. It's only been what, 12 years, 11 years or something. You never know, but it's the point is, it's a heartbreaking business. Holliston, I know people love Hatchet. I think most people say Frozen is my best movie, but Holliston, if there's one thing I want to be remembered for, it's that, because there's nothing else like it. There's a movie coming out now. I saw the trailer for, I haven't seen the film yet. I think it's called Crazy House. And Nick Frost is in it. It looks fucking great.
Oh yeah, I've heard of this. Yeah.
It's like a sitcom that becomes like kind of self-aware and becomes like a horror movie, which is what the eventual Holliston movie was going to be after we did the 5 or 6 seasons we wanted to do.
That would have been awesome.
But I'm watching this trailer and looking at the reviews, and I can already see it coming, where now someone's going to be like, we should make a sitcom like this. And then they're going to be like, it's the first independently made sitcom for horror fan. And I'm just going to say, like, fucking
no,
come on. Give me credit for something, man.
Well, I absolutely loved Holliston. I made a video about it on my channel because I want so many people to know. I have the Blu-rays. I made sure to buy the Blu-rays.
Thank you.
So I have it.
The special features on those are so good, man.
They are.
They're such a good job.
I love them so much. And I was a huge fan of War. Since a kid, you know, I grew up in that era, like much like you. I mean, I was born in the 80s, but I sort of grew up in the 90s basically. But I was in the era, like, you know, War, MTV, Beavis and Butthead, horror movies, Freddy, Jason, all that. I was into all that. And so when I found Holliston, I was like, these are my people. You know, I was absolutely loving it. And I do go back and forth to whether or not, you know, on the 3rd season, because you guys do end it on such a great cliffhanger, and I'm like, I want to know what happens, but also at the same time, I'm like, will it live up to my expectations? Because I love fear
in the show ever coming back, because there's been interest, and like there's been a couple like even false starts where there were various like financial entities that were like, we just want to bring the show back, like let's do it. And there is the fear that it's become such a thing to the people who love it now, that anything we do, even just the fact that we're older now, like I'm sure if we were ever to do the 3rd season, I would do everything I'm capable of to look like that again. That was like 2 years of working out. Like I've never worked out before. I had a trainer at one point. Like all of us were in, and the thing is, the rest of them, they all still look like that. Corey and Laura, Corey's had 3 kids. And Laura's had 2, and they look better than they ever did. Joe looks fucking great. D is like an Adonis. He doesn't age. Yeah. I'm the one who's like now starting to look my age, but this is also pandemic weight. I'm going to lose it. Yeah. I just like sugar too much. I think that's the problem.
I got that problem, man. I actually lost a lot of weight personally here. You know, I used to be almost 300 pounds, believe it or not.
Holy shit, dude. Good for you.
Yeah, I've lost a lot of weight. So, yeah.
It's hard, man. It's hard.
Very hard. It's very hard. And, you know, like when you're kind of like a nerd and you like horror movies and superheroes and stuff, and you get that weight on, you're like, I gotta do something. You know. Yeah. So I had to do something.
Well, just for your health, you must feel so much better.
Oh, like, it feels so much better, man.
Yeah.
So much better.
Like I've never been like heavy. You know what I mean? I just know I don't look like I did on the show. The poster for season 1, like the billboards and buses on the West Coast, was the 4 of us standing naked. And so that is on the wall. Oh, there. Right there. Yeah, right there. And so I have to look at that every day when I come to work, and it's like, God damn it, I'll never have a 6-pack like that again. But regardless of that, I know the other thing is people are like, who are you going to replace Odorous with? And we're not. Like,
Yeah.
if we ever bring the show back, we're not replacing Dave. You can't
Yeah,
replace
you
Dave
can't do
Brocky.
that.
So we will acknowledge it, and then the closet door will just stay closed. But everyone's always like, get Alice Cooper, get Sebastian Bach. First of all, have you met Sebastian Bach? 5 minutes, no one would be able to take it. Yeah, man, let's do the fucking show, dude. I fucking love Sebastian Bach, first of all. One of the greatest voices of all time. But no. So yeah, you can't replace Oderus. And we did have a joke in season 2 where he repeats a joke from season 1, and I call him on it and go, you already said that. And then he tries to say something else. He already said that too, if I'm remembering the joke right. And he goes, wow, I'm really becoming one note, aren't I? And I'm like, yeah, you are. Because it's like when people are like, the show would never be the same without him. If that was the only thing that you liked about the show, then yeah, it would never be the same. But there was some other stuff going for it too. And he would be more angry than anybody that we didn't keep going. And we do talk about it all the time. Like, fuck, man, I wish we could do it. And then during the pandemic, when we just gave it to Shudder, we're like, just run the first 2 seasons, make it available. If it performs, all we want is a 3rd season. And it's not an expensive show to make. It's really not. They spend more, from what I understand, on Joe Bob than an actual sitcom. So we're like, this is a no-brainer. And it did fucking great. And so we're like, all right, they're definitely going to want to do a 3rd season. And then I don't know what the execs left, or I know some of them are still there, but they just were like, it did well, but not that well, because they would rather have someone else finance it and then just pay like they do for all the movies they show, pay nothing to get the rights to just show the movie. So that wasn't going to be the right way. But whatever, you never know. There's always, life is weird. I thought Coffee Notes was dead twice, and then all of a sudden here it comes as Holliston. But we all would like to do it again. I know there's fans of the show that would like us to do it again. There's nothing that would make me happier. And again, I know Hatchet fans who are waiting for a 5th one don't like hearing that. They just want more Hatchet movies.
Yeah.
But Holliston that'll always be my baby.
I gotta say, as much as I do love the Hatchet movies, and I actually have not seen Frozen. That's the only one of yours I've not seen, which I plan on seeing.
That's my best movie, dude.
That's what I've heard, and I don't know why I haven't seen it. I really don't, because that's got a lot of cool people in it that that I've seen before. I just actually bought Spiral, the new Blu-ray that just came out.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I don't have one yet.
I bought it. So but I haven't had electricity because I got it and I was excited to watch it, and then my electricity went out for 3 days. So I was like, I can't watch it. So I plan on watching that soon, and I plan on watching Frozen this year. But I will have to say, as being a fan of yours, Holliston has been my favorite I've seen. It's my favorite. Yeah, I could do another Hatchet. That'd be awesome. I'd love it. I'd watch it. But I go back to Holliston so many times now. I love that show. And you're right. I love Dave Brocky and everything. I love Greg character, but I liked yours and Joe's friendship. I like the relation. That's I'm not a shipper, but I loved the relationships of all the characters and wonder what was going to happen. And it would be kind of interesting to see how you guys as horror fans and stuff would interact with like your child. What if he was like completely different from you guys? What if he was like a jock or something, and you guys are like these horror fans or stuff? Not that I'm sure you guys are out deals. So that's what I go back and forth on. So I think that would be cool.
I'm just glad you appreciate that stuff, because I can tell you the network didn't. They just wanted horror references, and you got to understand where they were coming from, which is we're a horror network. We're already taking a risk by doing this, so just keep making horror references. And I'm like. Yeah. No one cares about horror references. Like if it works every now and then, it's fine. Like my whole thing is I love when people play terrible versions of their real selves. So like to have Danielle Harris using me for Vicodin, and like Tony Todd smoking meth in our apartment, and like Kane Hodder being suicidal. Like it was just like we're all just making fun of ourselves. And but it was the heart of that show. And when we did the Christmas special, because by the time the Christmas special was the first thing we shot for season 2. And the thinking was the first season was only 6 episodes. It was just sort of starting to get some attention. And then it was going to be 18 months before season 2 would have aired, because it takes a long time to make all this. And I was like, we should at least do something in the interim. So if the very first thing we shoot when we start making season 2 is a Christmas special, we can at least get that out in between. And if I'm remembering correctly, I basically financed that myself because I just didn't get paid for season 2 to have the money go into that. Like, that's how important the show was to me. And again, I'm not rich. And then when we showed it to the network, they hated it. And they were just like, well, why is it sad? Like, we watched it in the office, and I think it was like people were tearing up, and I'm like, that's good. Like, if you look at the reaction to season 1, horror fans appreciated seeing themselves on TV for the first time, where they're not the butt of the joke, where they're not a like weird character in the like a sight gag in the corner or something, but real people who are constantly, if anyone knows what it's like to be told no, to not get the girl, to not get the job, to have the door slammed in your face, to feel like an outcast, it's us. And so you have this group of friends who are constantly losing, but they keep getting back up. Like, it's just, and so once I realized, well, the audience is actually hearing what I'm saying and they're appreciating it. They're seeing past exploding heads or dick jokes or whatever, but they're getting it. So with the Christmas special, we really went for it. And that was when the show really became the show. But the network, at the last second for air, they cut out all the scenes that were emotional. So when it aired on TV, I go running after Corey English with a giant present, and then it just cuts to me coming back in. And that whole hallway scene, which was improv, by the way. Like,
I watched the special features on that.
Thank you. And the boom operator was crying during that, because at that point, you've already done the first season, you know everybody, like everyone was so vested, and we've all been in that relationship on one side of it. Like, it speaks to people. And they cut it. And then that was a whole other story we don't have time for, but there was a lot of friction between the network and Joe and I for the whole making of season 2, which worked out for the best because they didn't even come to set, because like none of us were talking to each other over that Christmas special. But they had a Facebook page at the time, and like fans lit them up good for cutting it. And regardless, they're not the bad guys here. You got to understand where they were coming from. We're like, we're supposed to be a horror network and people are fucking crying. Like, what are you doing? And then this is supposed to be funny. Why is it sad? But then the proudest moment that I didn't realize then was that it wound up because of the way life went. That Dave Brocky's last moment on camera is the one time Odorous gets serious and gives me that speech about not giving up. And that's how he went out. And it's just crazy. And to meet fans who have that speech tattooed on them and stuff, it just I don't know. It's tragic the way that it ended, but sometimes I'm like, well, better that than it just starting to suck. Like, what if we had run out of steam? We wouldn't have run out of steam. We had so much stuff planned. And there was like a puppet episode. There was a black and white one. There was a musical one. It was just fuck.
I gotta, so many people, like, I don't know how you feel about the Big Bang Theory, but I am not a fan of Big Bang Theory. And I felt like your guys' show really resonated more, like you were bringing about how it felt like it was laughing with us and showcasing us, not laughing at us,
That's the show that it would get compared to the most.
I know that.
And I think that one of my favorite reviews that Holliston got was I think it was like the Austin, whatever the big paper is in Austin, said the show that you wished Big Bang Theory would be. And I took that as such a compliment. I have nothing against Big Bang Theory. That show is
man.
a massive success. They're clearly great at what they were doing. But I did need to use that as an example when I was still pitching the show to major networks, because they're like, wait, horror, they want to be horror directors. No, too niche. And I'm like, look at Big Bang Theory. You don't have to be into physics or be a nerd or any of that stuff to appreciate these characters. You don't have to be a horror fan to like Holliston. So many people that would come see us when we would do those live things at conventions weren't even into horror. They just loved that show. So, so yeah, it's they're very different and yet very similar when it comes to a executive level of trying to understand who the audience is for something like this and why it might work. Everyone knows horror does well at the box office, but it was like, yeah, but would horror fans watch a sitcom? And there's a lot of horror fans we meet that are like, I never watched a sitcom in my life. They're fucking stupid. There's still people who love horror. They watch Holliston. Like, why is there an audience laughing? And I think another big improvement we made with season 2 was season 1. We were making fun of having a laugh track. Like one of the very first jokes in the show, someone in the audience explains the joke out loud, where I think one of us says, I haven't seen the show in 10 years. One of us says, I will never get out of Holliston. And you hear someone in the audience yell, they said the name of the show and the town. Woo! Like, and so we purposely used the same canned like 4 laughs over and over again. And we thought it was really funny. It gets grating. And so seasons, because we do have an audience, it's just small. Like How I Met Your Mother never had a live audience. Yeah. And we did the reason we would have loved to have done it like the big networks do it, where you rehearse all week and then shoot the whole episode in front of a crowd. But we didn't have the budget for that. So we would have to like build the apartment set and then shoot all the scenes in the apartment for the whole season, tear that set down, put up the next set, shoot just like what you would do on a movie. And so to bring an audience in, you're jumping around from episode to episode. They don't understand what the story is or like what the payoff is, how it ends. Like, so we would have like 20, 35 people most, and it was usually like invited guests, friends, crew, but somebody had to be there to be an audience so we could pace the delivery of our jokes. And so season 2, we leaned way more into the real sound of the audience, and it made, I think, such a difference, as opposed to purposely trying to be like, remember, it's a laugh track, it's a laugh track. Like, so yeah. And one of my favorite audience moments in season 2 was when I couldn't stop laughing, which also even that we put that take in the show and not the real take. But the way I see it, it's a comedy. Go with whatever's funnier. And we break the fourth wall all the time. So when I just could not keep it together, and I still, to this day, I don't even know why. It just happens sometimes. And someone in the audience yelled out, "You've got this, Adam." And Joe just goes, "Did that help?"
I love it. I love it. It's so good.
But
So good.
Thank you for having seen Holliston.
Yes,
for your kind words. I appreciate it.
I love the show. Yes, it was. Yeah, I love the horror references. I love the Kane Hodder joke when he punches you first, I think, and then he goes, "Now lay down next to your bitch." I love that joke when he does it to you. I love it.
Joe, he's always hitting Joe.
Yeah, Joe. That was right. It's Joe. And I loved it. And Dee Snider was great. And then, like, I really just, I loved the relationships. I loved watching you guys. I like the struggle of the show, like these two guys who want to be a horror director and stuff, and their relations. I really love that. So I highly recommend the show to anybody. I always highly recommend the show to anybody. I'm like, no. If you like this, you have to see this. I'm always telling that. And I don't want to spoil anything, but it does have such a happy and sad ending all in one that I just think works. I love the Christmas special. I love that the Christmas special is sad because it feels real, feels natural for these guys and where the story is.
Yeah. The hard thing with the second season, though, is without spoiling things for people who haven't seen it, the end of the Christmas special, the audience really turned on Corey. Not the real Corey English, but the character Corey. And then the idea for her arc was by the end of season 2, you feel so bad for her. You love her again. And that like Corey's sort of the straightest character in terms of comedy. She's more of like the common sense in the show. But by the time we get to episode 9 of season 2, when she has to go to her ex-boyfriend's wedding and she gets so plastered drunk, which as an actor, that is really hard to do as well as she did it. And to have her have like her moment where she is the funny one for like a whole episode was just fantastic.
Yeah.
But then at the end and the finale, when she sings that song to me and I'm not even to my character and I'm not even paying attention because I'm kissing someone else, it just,
it is. It's
awful.
Just, yeah.
But yeah, I think, one last thing about Holliston. One of the things I learned is that the most important thing that happens when you have a new sitcom is testing. And so we had told FearNet, this wasn't so much testing, but critics. When you send the show out, you have to send the first 4 episodes. Don't just send one. Don't send them the pilot. Nobody watches one episode of a sitcom and is all in. Look at the pilot for Seinfeld. It's probably the worst 22 minutes ever committed to film. Like, it's awful. But you didn't know the characters yet. The show didn't have time to become the show. So we're like, at least if you give them 4, maybe they'll keep going. And I'm telling you, by the time they get to the 4th one, they'll be like, I get what they're doing here. This is good. And sure enough, everyone was like, by the time they get to the 4th episode, the Candyman one, that you can tell the cast is comfortable now. They know what they're doing. We shot Candyman first. That was the very first thing we shot. And we shot the first episode last because it's just something you learn in filmmaking. Don't shoot the first scene of the movie first if you can help it. With Hatchet, we wound up having to do that. But anyway, it was really fun to watch people say, by the time they get to the 4th one, you can tell they're really going in full swing and like the show's working. And all of us knew like that was the very first thing we shot. So again, no one knows anything. And I know I sound like a broken record, but anybody who wants to be a filmmaker, just work in the industry, if I have been doing it, like you absolutely can. I had no connections. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any money. I didn't like, and I'm just not that great, man. Like, so you can do it.
Yeah, everybody can do it.
It's just all about heart, and it's about the people you surround yourself with. I have had the greatest group of friends doing this with me, and that's why anything has ever gotten finished, and why anybody who has enjoyed it has enjoyed it. So so just don't give up, and don't let, there's so much negativity. Everyone, the odds of you making it are so slim, and this and that, and then you do make something, and even if 99 people say it's the greatest thing ever made, there's that one who's like, worst thing ever.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Just do you, and find a way to be happy.
Yeah, I agree with that. 100%. All right, as we get ready to close it down here, I do want to say I do find it funny that Joe Lynch said he had a big crush on Danielle Harris, and you were always giving her scenes to you in certain situations. You know, like he had a big crush on her, and then you got to kiss her and do all that stuff. So I thought that was funny.
It's that whole thing is so funny to me because, like, so just like Joe, she's our age, right? So when like Halloween 4 came out, I don't even think I was that into girls. I just was like, holy shit, there's a girl my age in a Halloween movie. She's the coolest thing ever. But she always just felt like a friend. And when Danielle and I first became friendly, it was through meeting at conventions and stuff and sharing like similar like health ailments at the time or whatever. Like I've never looked at her like that. And so when you look at, because there's two times now where there's been a joke involving kissing, it's not real kissing. Even in Hollywood, we never actually like, it's because I hate doing that shit. When it's for comedy's sake, I'll do anything. The whole like us spitting the gum into each other's mouth, and which in season 3 we were supposed to do that with a toothbrush and keep passing it around. And if you have the Blu-ray, you can watch because we show the scene from one angle, so you can see we really did it and it wasn't hidden in cuts. Yeah, that type of stuff, great. Nudity, fine, hilarious. But when you have to do a real kissing moment, especially with someone you're friends with, it's not what people think it is. It's so nerve-wracking. Everybody's watching you. You have to turn your head a certain way, watch your light, make sure the camera's, it's not this like sexual thing. It just isn't.
Right.
And when we, like I said, we shot Candyman first, and the network was like, you might want to shoot a different ending for this, just in case you don't get a second season. It's like first day of shooting. And like, that was one individual's way of leading, is always make people think they're going to get fired or their thing's not going to happen or whatever. And then you'll get the best out of them. That's not how I do things.
Right.
But I was like, well, fuck, like there's the whole like sitcom trope of me standing up for Corey to Tony Todd and him storming out, and she's conveniently there at the door and she heard everything. And then it was like, well, if this has to be our final episode, then we could at least do closure if Adam and Corey get back together. And this was all like on the day of being thrown this loop of they should end up together, which I did not want to happen. And so instead of her just hugging me, we had to do a take where we kiss. And I thought it went good enough. But when we got into editing and the editor's showing me that there's no good take, because every time Corey English would get near me, I would make these faces like you could tell how much I was nervous about having to do it. So when we did season 2, where there was like the Christmas special kissing stuff, we actually did have to like, or we shouldn't say we, she's a professional actress. We had to practice it for me just so I wouldn't do that again. Right. But it's but anyway, yeah, but Joe's always giving me shit. He's like, how come your character got to make out with Danielle? It's just like, it's not what people think it is.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Okay. One thing, and then we're going to close it out, is your Halloween things you do every year it's on YouTube, right? Because that's where I usually watch them.
Most of them are on YouTube. Some of them we can't have on YouTube for various reasons. But my website, ariescope.com.
Yeah, Ariescope.
All 26 years. Our 26th one will be out mid-October. I'm really excited for this one because the last couple of years we had the pandemic, which made shooting really weird. And then last year was the fucking strike, and we didn't know what we could do or not do as far as actors or even me writing it. But this year, the whole family was back together, and I think it's going to be our best one in 10 years. But you know, you never know. Like Jack Chop was a total throwaway, and that one became huge. And then there's other, like the Tiffany problem, I still think is absolutely amazing. And that's like, as far as like views go, but it's also longer. Cause like, we're not doing these to win awards or get into film festivals with them, or like, we just do it for fun and for the fans. So they're just as long as they need to be. This year's is about 6 minutes, I think. I won't say anything else because it's better to just hit play and then see what it is.
Yeah.
But I think people are really going to take it.
That's what I was just curious about, is like, I was wondering when it was coming out and sort of what you had planned, but I don't want to know. Like you said, I really don't want to know because I want to be able to watch it and enjoy it. We
try to release them around Columbus Day every October because the original one was Columbus Day weekend. So that's usually when we aim for. Some years we've been in production, and so it comes out a little later in October. But this time we actually shot this one, I think it was like the end of August, because a bunch of us are going to be leaving for the other side of the planet for many, many months, making the next movie that we're doing. And so we wanted to make sure we got a Halloween short done and out, and then we all take off and won't be heard from for a long time. So hopefully people dig it. Everything is always on ariescope.com, YouTube, some of the stuff. Jack Chop came out, did like 1.3 million views in like a week, and then got banned because there's a whole fucking thing with YouTube. It's the Wild West, but what people do is they flag your video saying they were offended, but then they rip it and then they put it on their site. on their YouTube channel. And so now yours is now like shadow banned, where unless you're logged into an account with the age restriction, you're not going to see our Jack Chop. You're going to see theirs. And so, and then they were monetizing it. There was one person who changed the end credits to claim they did it. Another big viral one we did, Saber. So I fucking hate this bullshit, man. I just want to make cool stuff. And anyway, there's tons of free stuff to watch on the Ariscope site, including the documentary that came out with the 20th Halloween short. It's called For the Love of Halloween, 20 years of Ariscope Halloween shorts. It's a feature length documentary. It's like an hour and 15, I think. But it goes through the first 20 years of Halloween shorts, who we are, why we did it, and stories about the making of them. That's on YouTube and the Ariscope site, and it's free to watch, and highly recommend it. By the end, you'll be very inspired to pick up a camera and just do something.
I'm right there with you. I've been working on my YouTube channel trying to create things. I've created documentaries for my channel about so many things, and I'm really into independent film and everything. And so I really appreciate your time. Thank you for being here. I'm sorry I have not seen Frozen. I really don't know how that escaped me, but I am going to watch it because I'm planning on watching it this October, with my whole horror movie watching that I do.
It's actually a better watch in the winter, and I highly recommend getting the Blu-ray, because the making of on that, it's the making of is just as long as the movie, and Adam Barnick, who's the guy who made it, it's one of the best I've ever seen. I know that's weird to say when it's on one of my films, but I didn't make it. And like when he first showed it to me, and I couldn't believe how comprehensive it was. And when you're doing it and you're making a movie, it's like a blur. And then months later to actually sit down and watch it, it was like we were watching other people doing it. But the making of that movie was so intense and difficult, and the way he captured it, just incredible. So I hope you like it when you do see it. If not, just rent the Disney one, and that one's great.
But no, I'm sure I will, because like I said, I've been a big fan of yours for a very long time, and this was so fun. Absolutely had a blast talking to you. I'm glad the internet started to come back in on us and we could have this conversation. So I very much appreciate it. And thank you. And to everybody watching, thank you guys for watching this, and have a good night.
You too. Thank you, everybody.
We are the Channel Changelings, and we are here.